Okay, folks, so I have a very quick follow-up to my last video where I went ahead and had these dashed lines, right? So what I want to do is I want to talk a little bit about how we take this a step further. And what we really want to use is we want to use this thing here called the appearance panel. And I can promise you that I will bring the appearance panel up multiple times in the rest of the course. It's not going to just be this one-time shot. If you've been in courses with me in the past, even if you were in my intro level course, I try to sneak this in literally everywhere because it's probably the biggest unsung hero in Adobe Illustrator. It's got so much power and allows you to go ahead and create things really quickly, and then most importantly modify them on the fly. And that's probably the biggest thing in any of this kind of creative kind of aspect of what we do, is that we need to know that we can modify things very quickly, because if we can't, then we can't miss it, or we can't make deadlines, or if a client needs a change really quickly, we have the ability to do it. So this is another one of those kind of Illustrator hacks. So I just want to point out before I move any forward at all that I have the ability to go ahead and take something like this, right? And this stroke has a specific kind of quality to it, if you will. So I can take my line here that I created and I can eyedrop, and a lot of times people think eyedropper is there for color, and they're 100% correct, but it's also there for stroke. So as you can see, I could go ahead and I can steal the stroke. And when I did that, it even keeps the taper in place, which I think is kind of cool and kind of nice. So what we also have the opportunity to do though is we can go ahead and we can create what we call double stroked objects or double stroke kind of documents. So to do this, I'm going to start out with the simple stroke, right? This one here. Actually, I'm going to even start out, I think, with it in uniform, just like this. And I am going to make sure that I have my appearance palette in place, which I do. So at the bottom of your appearance palette, we have some options. We have this thing that says add a new stroke, and add a new fill, and add a new effect. So I'm going to just go ahead and add a new stroke. And what it does is it gives me two strokes. Oh, looks like I need to plug in my laptop here. But it gives me two strokes where I can go ahead and I can pick things like the color, the size, things along those lines. And by default, it just copies the stroke that's there. So it just has the same properties. It's a 30-point black stroke. And, right in this case, it's got a cap. And that's all that's going on to it. So let's go ahead and let's look at this kind of and think about it kind of like a layer palette. So I'm going to uncheck the top one. And I'm going to click right here. And I kind of had a pretty fun color in place before with this gradient. I kind of like it. It's kind of cool. I think I might open up my gradient window just to go ahead and kind of tweak it a little bit more. So window and gradient. And I'm sorry, it's opening up like every single library I have. That's one of the things I really dislike about Adobe Illustrator, is that it does that sometimes. I don't think I really want this yellow because, again, I'm trying to create like a tiger tail. But I do like these kind of like red oranges a lot. I think that they're pretty powerful colors. So I'm going to pull this over here and get us a color that really resembles that kind of orangey, goldish, reddish part of a tiger that I think we are all kind of familiar with. So I'm going to go ahead and start with that. So next, I'm going to turn on this top one, okay? And you'll notice I turned that eyeball on and nothing happened. The reason it didn't happen is this object wasn't selected. Now, you might be thinking like, well, what do you mean? Aren't there two objects? Well, there's really only one, and the appearance is kind of an effect that we put on it. So if I go ahead and I turn that eyeball on, it comes back into play like this. So with this highlighted and this selected, I have the ability to come up here and do this whole with profile thing again. Well, that's kind of cool, right? So we can see the one behind it and we can see the one in front of it. I can also even go ahead and do things like decrease my stroke path or my stroke weight. So it almost looks like I have like a stroke within a stroke or an inline stroke. And appearance allows for this a lot. And when we get into some typography stuff, you're going to have a lot of fun with this. But I don't want to do an inline stroke, that's just tapered. What I want to do is I want to steal this concept, right? And then I want to make it a lot larger, just like this. 30 points, but I want to, instead of having it kind of taper on both ends, I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to have it taper like this. So it's going to do something along those lines. It's a little too much. So again, right, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my width tool and I'm going to come right down here and I'm going to play with it a little bit. And there we go. And I can go ahead and experiment with that so I can make it thicker and thinner in different spots. So this is going to give us some playfulness to this illustration, and then also a little bit of depth too. So we can really kind of modify how this thing kind of looks. So as you can see, right, what we have going on is we've got some thicker ones and some thinner parts. And let's take one last kind of stab at this, and let's make it really thin on the back end, really kind of thick here. Okay, and I realize that it kind of might look a little sloppy because I'm kind of going, I'm going thick to thin, and at one point or another, I am like breaking the barrier of what I'll call the quote-unquote tiger tail there. But this gives us a really kind of fun way in which we can look at it. And if we wanted to, right, with this selected, I can come back down here to the dash line part of the stroke palette, and I can start playing around with my sizes again. So if I don't want those things so equidistant to one another, okay, maybe I'll make this a 15-point gap instead, and there we go. I'll also go ahead and adjust it to the length of the object versus the length of the actual gap here. I can change that other dash and I can make it, 8 points wide, which makes it a little bit thicker. I think that knocks away the contrast that we had before, and I think that contrast was pretty cool. So maybe I'll bring that down again. I can even add another kind of dash, so I can make a thicker one, like a 12 or a 15 or something like that. And then put another, secondary gap in here, maybe a small gap, like 5. Right? And again, what I have here now is I've got this pattern that I've created, but at the same time, it doesn't look like a pattern because my line, right? If I take the dash line off, my line is just doing a funky kind of width profile like that. But I put the dash line back onto it, and now it's giving me this kind of different look. So this, again, is just another way, somewhat of an advanced way to take a look at a simple concept like stroke, right? And applying some not so simple things to it, like appearance. But it's not rocket science. It's not brain surgery. Essentially what we're doing is we're just going ahead and we're saying, I want this line on top of that line. And here's the best part about appearances. I just have to click once and then I can move them. Okay? And that's just great. That's fabulous. Or this is this was all Bezier curve, right? So I just go ahead and if I need to, if I want to modify this at all, right, I'll take my direct selection tool here and I'll click on here and I'll get my handles. So I can go ahead and I can change this. So I can really modify the tiger tail a little bit more. I can go ahead and I can go and add anchor points, or I could delete anchor points. And this is going to give me those better options to, again, modify the tiger tail. And you see, as I do it, check it out. That second stroke moves with the first one. And it's just a wonderful, wonderful, wonderful thing. So, play around with this, experiment with it, and enjoy it. Because playing around with the stroke panel for like a half an hour, 45 minutes, without intending to make anything, I bet you that you'll learn more than you did in 2 or 3 years when you were actually intending to use stroke. I promise it, in fact. So have fun with that. Thank you.